topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Sports for kids in America began with what we affectionately called sandlot ball, where kids organized their own games, made their own rules, and played until the sun went down. Then came along parents.
The National Alliance for Youth Sports was born out of a desire to bring order to the world of organized sports for children in America. While for the most part, children have a great experience playing sports, far too often parents and coaches lose perspective. This program is aimed at bringing some of America's best experts to talk about what we can do to change the atmosphere of win at all cost and parent poor behavior to one that focuses on children having a positive learning experience through sports. Here's our host, Fred Eng, the founder of the National Alliance for Youth Sports.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and thanks again for being back with Why Johnny Hates Sports. We've had some of the great experts in the country. I'm still trying to get over this cold. We've had some of the great experts in the country, talking about from everything from being a hockey player to being a sports psychologist. And today we've got a guest who's going to talk about insurance and what that all means for kids playing sports. So I want to introduce Wayne Guttridge to you from Matterhorn Insurance. And so Wayne, the old expression, if I got on an elevator and wanted to see your tag on you that said Matterhorn Insurance, I'd say, can you tell me by the time I get off on the 7th floor what that's all about? So Here we go. I'm pushing the button.
And Fred, I appreciate you inviting us. I'll tell you a little bit about me and a little bit about Matterhorn and then what we do well in the marketplace. My apologies, I don't have the lighting absolutely correct, but hopefully you can see enough of me to recognize. Some information on myself. I have 37 years in the insurance industry on both the property and casualty as well as accident and health. In my background, I've worked for two of the biggest global insurance companies, AIG and Zurich, twice. I held a senior position as executive vice president, senior vice president, as well as head of North America. I've developed insurance products and their strategies in the US, in London, the Middle East, India, and China. My partners, of which I have three, have an equal resume. One as a global head of distribution for Zurich in Switzerland, and the second developing products at AIG in the US. My area of expertise is developing programs to help membership grow and expand their value proposition. In the past 30 years, I've helped the American Medical Association, the ABA, and also I had the opportunity to underwrite the US Olympic Committee, their athletes, coaches, and credentialed guests during the London Games a few years ago. But what we're really excited about is the partnership that we have with NAES and how we can help the members improve their risk position and reduce their cost structure. So John was my first challenge. We met John in 2023 at a NAES conference in Baltimore. And I think at that point in time, everyone was just crawling out of COVID. NAYS at the time had 7 policies in force with 6 different carriers and multiple expiration dates. We see more and more of this where there are multiple policies and multiple dates, and we were able to help NAYS by combining those 7 policies to 5 and finding 1 carrier instead of 7 carriers to place the business. So from my perspective, John, my job is to make things simpler for coaches and for league directors, and to find a way to give them better coverage at a lower cost.
Well, let me take you back, Wayne, back to the beginning. There was a thing back in 1981, I think, called the Federal Risk Retention. Because we got time, I got to ask you to make the answers as quick as you can, because the show only goes so long. So can you tell me something about the Risk Retention Act?
Yeah, and actually, John, I'm not, 1981, I was in high school. I think that's an excuse. But I'm not familiar with that specific part of the legislation.
But let me tell you what it was, because it did mean a great deal to us. Back then, youth leagues across the country, were operating just like in local communities and across the country with programs like Little League Baseball and Pop Warner football. And what happened is that there was people in communities, the only way they could get any kind of insurance was their local carrier who tried to protect them. But then they came along, and that's what happened with this Risk Retention Act that helped people bring together organizations and people so they could kind of like what we're doing. And it's kind of the funny thing about the whole deal, Wayne, is that that's how our organization got started, because while we wanted coaches to be trained in safety and understand the psychological impact of dealing with kids, the thing that they were interested in is insurance. And that's how it all started. So when you guys came into the picture, like you mentioned, with John, who is now the CEO of the organization, it makes it really great for people. But tell me how that protection works.
Yeah, well, before you can get on any field or in any gymnasium, everyone wants to make sure that you have general liability insurance, and that's the insurance that will cover you in a liability position in case something happens, that there's an incident. They for the most part do not want to be held accountable for your actions on a field. The other component that comes in behind that we see all the time is a participant accident, and that's really in a lot of organizations packaged together. So the participant accident helps to offset medical bills that could occur while someone's playing. So if someone sprains their leg, they're hurt. Typically, if you go to a hospital these days, John, it costs at least $2,500 to get in. And typically people have medical insurance, but there's always an added cost there. So the participant accident would kick in to the individual who is playing in the sport to help offset the cost from the medical process. The other components that we see is that in some sports, there's a lot of property. You may have equipment issues. You may have, storage of football helmets, storage of balls. Anything from a property perspective is something that we would look to insure within our company. And there are also special events, what we call contingency liability events. So, weather insurance, event insurance. We also do commercial auto, workers' compensation, excess liability, high limits. So our organization is really structured to handle almost any component that's out there in need of insurance with the Matterhorn.
Yeah, I understand all of that well, I understand a little bit of because I've had to deal with, having insurance for the organization because, like I say, back then we were the National Youth Sport Coaches Association, so the coaches needed insurance. But the thing about it, to bring it back to the basic level of things, that you've got what I refer to as Billy Jones's father. He gets roped into coming out and saying, okay, Billy wants to play baseball, whatever particular sport. And all of a sudden they say to his father, we're going to need you to coach. So they go out there to coach, and they haven't the slightest idea because they're a volunteer and they're there. They don't realize that they are liable for whatever might happen with these kids. And they're just, a plumber, truck driver, pharmacist, who cares, whatever. They're a volunteer. So what do you tell these people?
Yeah. And John, I have direct experience
I
in
got to
doing
correct
that.
you one thing, Wayne. I get it all the time. I'm Fred, and that's John.
Sorry, Fred. No, I know firsthand experience because I coached for 12 years, and I was on one side with the parents, and a coach decided that coaching was not for him. And I was, as a risk manager in the insurance industry, I was somewhat surprised that they had allowed me to go to the other side of the field and coach a group of girls playing soccer. So what we're really interested in, and one of the reasons that we've partnered with John, is that the educational components actually decrease risk over time. So an educated coach and how to coach and what you can and cannot do is key from an insurance perspective. Because if you're getting that individual that walks across the field who's never been coached before, doesn't understand, the sport, doesn't understand, the officials, and necessarily doesn't understand, what his responsibility is. What NAES brings to the table is a structured environment that people can be credentialed over time. And that's why when we're looking at multiple carriers out there, they're all looking for the same type of risk, and a better than average risk is someone that educates their staff, that knows what they're talking about. Those tend to have lesser claims and the amount of the claims, which is why, we've partnered with NAES, because we think you're one of the most outstanding organizations in the U.S.
Well, that's nice of you to say, because we are. Anyway, with that, Wayne, that's funny you mentioned that, because way back in the beginning, we did a video, and John may have told you about it. It was called Youth Sports on Trial. And what we did is similar to what you were talking about. We had an attorney that was on our board, and he acted as the attorney in this trial. And we had a coach that came in, and the coach had done some kind of negligent thing that happened on the field, and he went through the trial. And then the judge said, well, what kind of training have you had? And the guy said, well, I haven't had any training at all. And then they said, well, there's programs available for you to get trained. And he said, well, I didn't know, or I didn't want to go, and one of those things. Well, so what happened to this guy in this case, even though it was, a fictitious situation. What would have happened there, do you think?
Well, I've lived through it. And in 1991, I started, actually 1994, I started coaching my daughter. And I was a little bit surprised at not having some structure where you're doing background checks, where people were understanding how the sport should be conducted. And actually in the mid 1990s, NAES came to our local area in Maryland and provided information through our league director to all the coaches and assistant coaches, which really helped us to better understand what some of those legal issues could arise in sports. And that's really where, you're looking at a general liability policy. It isn't just paying for, a payment because of doing something wrong negligently, but it's really understanding the process and how you work to avoid those type of opportunities.
Yeah, as you mentioned that, I think let me give you a couple examples of scenarios that happen, true stories, because as I've been around to discuss the whole issue of youth sports throughout the last umpteen number of years, people have come up and told me stories. And a couple of them, I often wondered, what happened to that individual? I'll give you one example. One of my favorites is its mother goes to pick her son up at football practice, and he's not there. And she asked the coach and said, well, where is he? And he says, he's over in the car over there. And she says, over the car. She walks over to the car, and he's in the car. The motor's running. The heat's turned up on high. The doors are closed, and she opens the door, and he's wrapped in plastic wrap. And she's horrified because of the obvious. The poor kid could have had a heat stroke and died. So she goes and screams at the coach and says, you almost killed my child if I hadn't been here. I wonder what would have happened to that coach and maybe even the league that he was coaching in. What do you think would have happened?
Well, I would say in today's very litigious environment that he's lucky that the mom didn't take that to a larger level and didn't call the police and didn't necessarily try to level a response against him and against the general liability. But I would say today the environment that happening would probably be a very different outcome. And
would you have been able to cover? Would Matterhorn be able to cover him with that any kind of the insurance that you provide?
Well, that's what it's general liability. So if you're responsible and you're the responsible coach and you put a child in harm's way, then there's a big issue with that. Whether it's leaving them in a car or not allowing them to play in a safe environment, those items are all covered under general liability. And the first component of the general liability is defense costs. So if that coach is brought to a local law individual, this would help to protect and provide legal costs to defend the coach as well. So 20 years ago, we would never see this. Now, if you get your legs scraped on the fence walking into a baseball field, everybody is looking to gather enough information to potentially say, hey, you got to do a better job. Your fields aren't correct. It's not safe for our kids, and those type of events potentially will hit the general liability.
So all the more need for insurance to cover those situations. How about when you have a football organization? And in football, I've always said these are the most dangerous kind of people that are out coaching kids, because you got a lot of these macho kind of coaches that are volunteers that used to play maybe high school football. Maybe they probably never made the team and said, well, I'm going to go out and coach and whatever. And they're out there coaching. I'll give you a good example. There was one young guy and he's coaching, and the quarterback they had in his youth football team, he runs around the end, another defensive player runs and bangs and knocks him on the ground. And the quarterback's laying there moaning and dire pain. And this young assistant, about 18 years old, goes over and says, oh, I know what you need to do. I know what you need to do. He popped his arm, his shoulder. So he told the kid to stand up, told the kid to put his fist under his arm, and then he pushed down on the arm like this, boom, and the kid passed out on the ground. You know what was wrong with the quarterback? His arm was broken right here, so he just broke it fully. So I thought in that situation, if I was a parent of that kid and that young assistant coach, I could think, why would they even allow him to be out there coaching these kids? But can insurance cover that situation?
Yeah, and two things. One is, you really need a professional when there's a child hurt, and I feel bad for the parent and the person that was involved. But if there is an injury, there's a product that's typically offered with the general liability, which is accident medical expense, and that amount can, that amount of coverage can be anywhere from $1,000 up to $25,000. So in that situation where he broke his arm, and just the rehabilitation of that process could be tens of thousands of dollars. So that's where we see a lot of league directors and coaches making sure that they have an ample amount of coverage. $1,000 doesn't go very far these days. So our recommendation is to take the higher limit. Just going to a emergency room is at least $2,500, and where you're responsible in that situation, you want to make sure that you have coverage, with your local insurance broker or a national broker out there. You don't want to be barren and not have accident coverage.
Well, I'm sure glad that you guys came along, and now you're kind of the overall coverage, I think, to help all of these youth organizations across the country, to be able to have access to your great program. And that's why the National Alliance for Youth Sports is hooked on and joined in partnership with you. One of the last things I want to mention to Wayne is that from time to time, because this program goes out to 12,500 people who are either coaches or in leagues around the country or youth sport administrators. So they need to get insurance information constantly. So what I thought would really be neat is to have a tip of the week, something that lasts maybe no more than a minute. And you could tell a scenario, something to keep in mind of people, why it's important for them to have insurance. I know people think, okay, insurance people are selling insurance, but you're selling the protection that is needed, that we all need insurance and everywhere in our lives. So I think it'd be great. Could we talk you into doing that?
Yeah, well, John is way ahead of us. So we've just completed some educational components that you can view on the NACE site. And in addition to that, we also have a link on your site where you can click and actually move over to Matterhorn's site and provide your information, and we'll provide you back with not only educational information, but also an opportunity to reduce your costs and to increase your protection, all through that same site.
Well, that's great. That's better than any tip, because you can look at it anytime you want to. So, Wayne, I want to thank you very much for being on the show today and providing, the information about insurance to coaches and parents and youth leagues across the country. And we hope to have you back on again in the future. And I hope it's not for one of these catastrophic situations that happen. So thanks again. Have a great weekend.
Fred, you do the same. Thank you so much.
Well, that's it for another week. I can't believe it. We've already had about 12 weeks and 12 different shows. So thanks for being here. And if you have any friends out there that are interested in the whole area of youth sports, whether it's kids, whether it's leagues, or whether you're being a parent and seeing things that don't go the way they should for kids in sports, because remember that sports are the outdoor classroom. What kids learn through sports is immeasurable. So again, thanks for joining in, and hopefully we'll see you next Friday morning at 11 a.m.
This program is sponsored by Surdurf Publishing in the interest for better sports for kids, better kids for life.
In this best-selling book, a child, while failing to live up to his father's expectations, is shamed and humiliated beyond belief. He vows to never allow his own son to face the same.